Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Hack the Planet podcast, the only podcast that relies on our guests to get things up and running. We're joined.
Sorely disappointed by this one. And
We are joined today by Mubix, or Rob Fuller, who is on the verge of producing a small "How to Set Up Discord to Record Podcast" segment. Just moments ago. So, Mubix, I know why your name is familiar to me, but I'm going to save that for a moment. I imagine that for a variety of reasons, when you are at a hacker conference or whatever, that people recognize you or recognize your name, and I'm wondering, how, like, what do people recognize you for most often?
honestly, the Metasploit Minute stuff was probably the biggest thing. Before that, it was Hack 5, just being on Hack 5 in general. That's really it. Like, being recognized by friends is relatively normal, but like, because of the podcasts and the video, that's really where I got any other recognition from.
So the funny thing is, I identify you most with the script for the land turtle, like the so-called Mubix script for the land turtle. It, like, implemented the LMNR responder attack, and for a moment, a brief shining moment in history there, I had this magic wand that I could just stick into the USB port of any Windows machine, and then just wait until the light blinked 3 times, and then pull it out, and I'd have like account hashes on it.
Yeah, that was the one crazy, very, very crazy moment. So, just to give a little bit backstory on QuickCreds, um, I um, I was playing with oh man, what was it called? It's a USB armory. I was playing with a USB armory, and I had this thing, as we all do. We have all these devices that some of us don't actually use all that often. We buy them at DEF CON or whatever, and they go and sit in a bin somewhere. Right?
Why are you attacking me right now?
So
I have a whole wall of those bins over there.
right. So, like, I carried around this USB armory all the time, thinking this is such an amazing piece of gear. I should figure out how to use it. Something. And the USB armory, you stick it in, and it's just a network device. It can store. It has a TPM on it. It was a really awesome device for how much it cost. So I'm like, okay, so it spins up a network interface. What can I do with that? Let's try a responder. I got it to run responder, but that was nothing big for me, because, like, I had a machine, it was unlocked, I put responder in. I could do so many other things better if the machine was unlocked, and I could do things, like I could run commands on it instead of sticking in a USB and running commands. And just by dumb luck, I had unplugged the USB armory, and I'd plugged it back in after I'd locked my machine to go get something to eat or whatever, and I'd come back, and I logged back in, and credentials were in responders logs, a bunch of them, and I'm like, what happened? Like, how did that at all happen? And so I did a bunch of testing. I'm like, okay, this shouldn't work. If I say that this works on Twitter or on my blog or whatever, I'm going to get ripped to shreds if this is something that only works on my machine. So I tried it on a VM. I tried it on another VM. I tried it on a Mac with a VM. I tried it on my wife's machine. I tried it on maybe some machines at some retail places, just to see if it's just mine or not. So I don't advocate doing that. That's illegal. But like, I tried it on a bunch of machines, that night, and I'm like, okay, this is real. It does some. It actually gets credentials when you plug this in to a Windows machine. For some reason, Windows will automatically authenticate um, based on a metric, um, or it'll automatically authenticate to the default route to machines that it's trying to route to based on a routing metric, right? So USB, if the USB armory was 10100, it was faster than the Wi-Fi that all of my stuff was connected to at the time. So it got a better metric just because it's hardwired and faster. So I wrote up a blog post about how it could work, and I'm like, okay, a few people were going to find this interesting. This is I thought it was pretty cool. I go to sleep. I wake up at 2 a.m. because my phone has not stopped buzzing, and it hit the register, it hit wired, it hit like all of these other things. I'm like, what is going on? And so I talked to Darren to see if he could make the turtle have a faster. Um, so USB can tell the uh, the host that it has any kind of Ethernet it wants. It'll just go at the max speed it can, right? So you can tell it that you have a 2 gig Ethernet USB port, and it'll just go at USB 2 speeds. So, but if you tell it that, you get a higher metric. So you'll even outpace if the machine is plugged into like a corporate network and is plugged into a gig switch, and you tell it you're a 2 gig network interface. Then you still get you still win that pass. So yeah, I love that attack, and I'm happy that I'm happy and sad that Microsoft fixed it, but like it still works in a lot of ways, in a lot of places, because Win 7 not so much, right? Um, so yeah, long story long, that was a very interesting time in my life.
So, how did they fix it exactly? I've tried it on newer Windows machines, and you either don't get hashes, or do you get new hashes, or you get like MSA account hashes or something. I'm not sure what that is.
Sure. So they only fixed the network service. So the services that were doing the authentication while it was locked out were Microsoft services at the time. I don't remember them off the top of my head which services they were, but they fixed those services. You will still get credentials if a third-party application is trying to find its way out and using Windows APIs to authenticate to something. Um, so a lot of MS SQL clients that are not the Microsoft client will do this, and you'll get developers all day, every day. But if it's Microsoft based, it doesn't do it anymore.
Huh.
And you'll get
I
NTLM v2 or v1 depending on how the system is configured. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. So I heard someone told me at some point that there were kind of responder attacks that worked on other platforms as well. But I don't know if I ever do you know about any like responder stuff that would work against Linux?
So for the Mac, if you joined, so this attack worked against Macs because for only domain joined via Jamf or another platform, domain joined Macs, because Jamf at the time would configure Firefox to authenticate automatically, and Safari if it's. I mean, it would if it saw Firefox, it'd change it, but if it saw Safari, it'd change that too, um, to automatically use NTLM authentication. So it would still work on Macs, but only domain joined Macs, and they weren't as popular at the time. They're much more commonplace now, but um, yeah, that actually still works. As far as Linux is concerned, I don't know of any automatically authenticating Linux protocol like NTLM does.
No, there's Kerberos-based SSO.
Yeah.
But yeah, it basically uses like as far as I'm aware, like PAM doesn't really support any of the standard authentication mechanisms. You have to use LDAP LDAP based.
Right. So the only thing you'd get is SMTP credentials if they're still using old SMTP clients. And since Responder does SMTP and like HTTP basic and that kind of stuff.
Very cool. So you were working at Hack5 at the time?
I've never actually worked for Hack5.
What kind of organization is Hack5? I'm not entirely sure. I've definitely bought like a fair number of gadgets from them over the years, but I don't know exactly what I'm sponsoring with that.
They are a company. Darren works for them. All of the developers for the different devices work for Hack5. Some of the hosts have worked for Hack5. Shannon worked for Hack5. So it's a company. I just have never joined the company full time.
Fair enough. So I did want to ask you about the Metasploit Minute. So I have checked out like a large number of the Metasploit Minute segments and some of the other video segments that Hack5's done, and some of them are like really, really impressive. So one of the things that kind of impresses me about Hack5 is it's something about the pacing and the technical level of the content. So I was kind of curious, like, so your Metasploit Minute segments are excellent, but another one that I thought was really good was the one they did with Vis a couple of years ago, where it's just him kind of talking about network infrastructure at a really sort of detailed level. But I was sort of wondering what like what do they do to make a video, or how much of it is sort of Hack5 directed, and how much of it is sort of just like you making choices.
So for Metasploit Minute, I came up with all of the content and all of the topics. Darren is like amazing at editing, amazing at directing, and he made them look better than I ever could. So like the pacing and all of the uhs and ahs and and all of that, making us look good, basically, is all Darren. It just really depends on the show and who's running it and what the content is. And like for Techzilla, they had to pull in so much content that they actually had everyone working on some not everyone, but a group of people working on making content all the time.
So how did you get into doing like the training videos initially? So did you start out doing training stuff, or did you start out like red teaming or something else?
Define start. So go ahead.
Yeah, what was your first introduction into hacking or infosec?
So those are two different things.
When I got into hacking, infosec wasn't a thing yet.
When I got into hacking, I didn't know it was called hacking. I have and always been a hardcore gamer. I played StarCraft and Ultima Online nonstop for many summers. Just to give you a general idea of what my age is. My
no EverQuest though. Just Ultima Online.
Diablo.
Speaking of EverQuest, we can get into that once we talk about my handle. So what I used to love doing is like cheating. I loved cheating at video games. Game Genie Game Shark, all of those things. You could tweak your game genie to do some of the things Game Shark could do, like hex code freezing. I didn't know what any of that was back then, but I knew that if I froze E0 F1 to 100, I could stay at 100 health, right?
Yep.
And
I remember when I first made the connection that was actually just basically debugging.
Yeah. It's like debugging.
Many years later.
It's debugging for 6-year-olds.
Hey. So any of you remember T-Search 16 at all? No? Okay. So T-Search 16 was a 16-bit hex code memory reader that would find and freeze memory for any Windows process that was 16-bit, which was all of them at the time.
Was that part of Turbo Assembler or?
No, I don't believe so. This was someone else made it. But anyways, I would constantly play like Command and Conquer and stuff like that, and freeze those Tiberian levels all the way up. And so that was my first intro to hacking. Really, I didn't really do much outside of that initially.
Did you ever manage to get a chance to play with soft types? That was my favorite back in the day.
No, I come from humble beginnings.
Soft types had a really short lifespan. It was really amazing. It was considered amazing for a very short period of time, and then it was like gone.
Yeah.
I think I started out editing SimCity save games in a hex editor myself. So that was the whole.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a common theme, I think.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or trying to get pirated games to work, on old hardware.
I have scanned some of the old hard drives that I've had from pirated game stuff and software, and many of them are like worms and viruses and stuff like that. Like it's like I am surprised that I wasn't owned 6 Ways from Sunday just by like the key gens that I was downloading.
What did the worms and viruses of the 90s want to do?
Oh, I haven't gone too far into them. I'll have to pull them back out and start actually.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's like before there were World of Warcraft passwords to steal. Like, what did you even do?
Yeah, it's like back before. If you're not paying for the software, it's like, what are they going to steal? It's not like you have credit card information on your computer.
Archive.org thanks you in advance for your contribution.
Yeah. You had Terminate and Stay Resident, and you had MBR.
Oh, I'm talking dial-up days, dude. Like I have malware from dial-up days.
Sasser Blaster or before? I don't know. That was later. I was still on dial-up, but everyone else was on high speed.
I'd be interested in pulling that apart.
So my intro to InfoSec was really Hack 5. I joined the Marine Corps soon after I was in high school, and came out of my first 4 years as a combat engineer, explosives and kinetic chemistry, basically. And then my second 4 years was in as a 0656, 0651, 4066. All of those probably mean nothing to you. Those are MOS or job numbers. And that just means computer tech or 0666, tactical data communication specialist.
Holy crap, that's a title.
Right.
Tactical data communications specialist.
So you're a radar from ASH?
Yeah. Which basically means that I can use the old Kayak, if you guys remember HP Kayaks at all, which were 33 megahertz, to handle all of the routing protocols on routers and switches and POP suites. And this was in 2000, which is insane because we had dual core processors at that point. So anyways.
I think I remember Kayak systems.
Yeah. So I joined. I went to Quantico and was working there as a instant responder, actually. And I heard about Hack5 because I listened to a bunch of different podcasts at the time, the very few that were out or existed back then. And I found out they at the time lived in Virginia. The whole Hack House was there. They hosted a bunch of parties like college frat people do. Well, they're not a frat, but they basically were a hacker frat. And so went down to one of the parties, hung out, and as hackers do, talked about technical stuff at a party instead of really partying. Had a bunch of fun talking back and forth about some of the USB tools that I'd found and figured out how to use. And the rest is history when it comes to InfoSec. Like that was really where my start was. I did have a short period of time where I was part of a blog, and you'd have to go find this, called White Dust Security. I did my very first blog post ever, and they actually ran the black and white ball for a while over in the UK. And my very first blog post was on how Tor worked and using Tor and why it was useful. And that you can find on archive.org. But it's a great blast from the past from me getting into InfoSec.
So,
Very cool.
so your involvement with Hack5, like from the beginning, you were. What was the first thing you did for them? Was it like a video or?
Yeah. So the first thing I did for them was I joined. My first episode that I ever appeared on was season 1, episode 9, I believe, and I talked about the USB toolkits that I had. So I, at the time, hated having to install everything, so I figured out how to get any tool that I needed into a package where I could run it from a USB stick, and I'd carry the USB stick everywhere. And I had like a bunch of these applications that I'd either modified or found and were super useful.
Was this the portable apps, tiny apps era?
No, this was before that.
Oh, I had some USB sticks with all my apps on it at various points.
Yeah, I was definitely showing people Firefox that at one point using a USB stick. It's like, oh, check out this hot new browser. But anyway, I digress.
Well, it's been you've been
called Firefox then,
right?
So you've been focused on kind of training or the education side of things since very early in your involvement, at least in the InfoSec industry.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess how do you think about that? Is it sort of how do you approach creating a training on a new topic or at a higher level? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You keep asking me questions. I'm trying to write them down while you ask, so I don't miss any of them.
Oh no, it's okay. I'll save the second one.
Okay. So I think that the absolutely best way to learn anything is try and teach it, right? So even if I don't know a topic very well, I'm going to try and build a blog post or a topic or a training material on that topic. So I force myself to learn it better, because you got to hold yourself to a certain standard, but you hold when someone else, like when you're teaching someone, to a even higher standard. So getting that backwards knowledge and getting ready to answer the questions someone's going to ask you when you're teaching someone is really the coolest way to learn for me. And the second part of that is that since I've been a kid, I've wanted to be a teacher. So I am actually actively working to become a high school or college teacher at some point. Everyone thinks that that's cute or that's interesting or whatever. They don't understand that I am very, very bullheaded. I will get there someday.
I think it's well, that's sort of why I wanted to get at the question, because I think it's really clear that you have a passion for teaching from your output. I think it really shows in your work. And I was kind of interested though, so if you're really passionate about teaching, what is so attractive about InfoSec on top of that as a subject for you to teach?
Because there's always something to learn. I mean, in every single topic, from anatomy to math, there's always something new to learn and boundaries to push. I'm not saying that InfoSec is different in there. What I am saying is that InfoSec, there's so much to learn all the time, right? So like, there's just so much to learn in so many different topics so quickly, and it all changes so quickly that it's always been, it just stays interesting.
It's like a jungle. It's like a jungle would be for an epidemiologist.
A related question to
Sure.
this. So you mentioned that you wanted to be a teacher since you were very young. So like, where did you get that I want to help people learn mentality? Where did that come from?
From good teachers.
It's a good answer.
Yeah, I had a couple really, really good teachers, and I am not the easiest person to teach, especially in standard classroom settings. And a lot of the teachers that I had took the time to make it so that I learned in my way, and I want to do that for other people.
So I think oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess one more thing. So I mean, you've been around long enough. You probably saw a little bit of what the late '90s quote unquote hacker scene was like. And then when I think about Hack 5, I personally like to look at things from an academic perspective, and I think Hack 5 is a great resource. I don't think Hack 5 would have gone over well in the late '90s. Did you see that transition between like elitism and then the teaching format that or the free information, the sharing of information, which we'll also go into later with Project Mentor. But
Sure.
did you see that transition yourself, or did you notice something about that?
No, honestly, I didn't know the hacking scene existed in the 90s. I didn't. I had dial-up, barely. I didn't have anyone in my area that did hacking or security or anything related to that. There was, and the two so the two times I tried to learn hacking or what it was, I joined FNet for the like I knew what IRC was. I joined Pound Hack, and I asked how to
that's
learn
the
how to
worst.
hack.
Oh my god.
And
man.
and the great part
is the worst.
Yeah, well, that's the only where, like,
I totally forgot about doing that.
that's what I did. And I asked how to hack, and they were like, hey, so it's real simple. You have to install the tools first. To do that, you type init space 6 on your Linux machine. I'm like, sweet, I'll do it.
Oh my
Type
god.
init 6. For those who don't know, init 6 is reboot.
Lord.
Right now. It's initialize run whatever, run level 6. Thanks.
Oh man, that doesn't even work anymore because it's all System D these days.
Yeah. So
you gotta save it for the System D episode, Mac. Just keep it in the past.
Yeah.
So I had to do that a couple times before I caught on that they didn't want me there. So that was my only experience with anything related to hacking, other than the hex editing that I thought was game cheating at the time. And I joined the Marine Corps, and I went to Okinawa, Japan, and we had dial-up at 14.4. That's it. All the way from 2000 to 2004, where everyone was cable modems and stuff, and hacking was blowing up. And 2005 is when I learned about Hack 5, and I was in Quantico and stuff. So I didn't even start InfoSec until, or even knew it existed until 2005. So so to answer your question, I did not see the transition, but I definitely felt the elitism very much so, to the point where even after I joined Twitter in 2007 ish, there was a point in 2008 or something where I got in a Twitter fight with a few InfoSec people about something very stupid. They ganged up on me, and I quit Twitter. I deleted all my followers. I deleted every tweet I'd ever done. I was like, I'm done. This is so toxic. I'm not even here. And people reached out to me and said, "Are you okay?" Like friends. And I told them what had happened and what I was feeling at the time, and they're like, "Come back. Those guys are idiots." It took me a lot of soul searching to get past, the gods I thought they were, and them striking me down, basically, right? So I looked up to these people. I learned from these people, and getting to the point where I learned that they're human too, and they can be assholes. I hope I can swear on this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We have no
like-
sponsors.
Who the fuck is this guy?
So-
sitting here?
So like, it took me a lot of soul searching to get to the point where I was okay with the assholes on Twitter and the assholes on the internet. So like, I wasn't even ready for it mentally until late 2007 ish.
There's one formula that I found on the internet from a Penny Arcade comic, and they weren't used to the limelight of their fame, so they were getting like a whole bunch of terrible internet trolls. But it's basically anonymity plus the internet equals fucking asshole.
Yeah.
That formula is one of the few universal constants of the internet.
Myself, I still don't use Twitter. I don't use Facebook. I can't really deal with it. So I limit my the only social network I really use a lot of is GitHub. Because it actually doesn't let you message people.
Source or get the fuck out, right?
Yeah, exactly. You just send source patches back and forth, and then and then it's like, if it also the other one I use is IRC, because for almost the opposite reason, though, because basically the only people in IRC now are people that can figure out how to run an IRC client. But that's sort of like, I do recall that like extreme IRC elitism of the 90s, where it's like, it wasn't just enough that you could run an IRC client. You also needed to wait on the porch for 3 days while people told you to go away or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hack 5 would not have gone over well in the late 90s.
It still didn't. In 2005, it was we got the Hack 5 crew and us got hacked in 2006 or 7 or whatever, DEF CON 15. All of our stuff was on ZFO 5. Like, Hack 5 still isn't as accepted as you might think. We still got a lot of hate.
It's unfortunate because it's a legitimate learning resource.
Yeah, I agree.
But
Well, so I guess if the obvious question is, if someone logged into your IRC channel today and asked you, how do I learn to hack? What would you tell them now?
I'd teach them because I like teaching.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you might very well point them at the Hack 5 videos, I guess. Yeah.
Well, yeah, what would be the first thing that you send them to?
If they, my blog post on ethics in hacking. That would be where I'd send them first.
Nice.
is this a good segue into Project Mentor?
What is Project Mentor?
So Project Mentor actually started back before I knew Hack 5, when I was still with doing the white dust stuff. That's not a euphemism for anything. That was a
Well,
group.
I mean,
Sounds like a drug
it may
problem.
not be, but like it is now. I don't
Yeah.
So
Yeah, don't do the white dust stuff.
so
I just looked it up on the archive machine, and one of the featured articles is sniffing and sniffer detection.
yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, so just to segue 2 seconds, the original owner, or like the main founders of White Dust, left InfoSec because it was too toxic at the time. They completely have not come back either. So back on topic though, Project Mentor started with a few friends of mine, Duder and Logic, and we started the idea that like there should be a learning resource for hacking and attack or security and stuff like that, and a place that people can just try things out. Logic runs Packet. What is it called? Something. He's
Packet store.
if you no. Anyways, Packet Life, I think it is. Anyways, packetlife.net. So packetlife.net is a place where he's continued to blog. He's pretty much the resource that knows everything about Cisco ever. Stretch, yeah. So him, me, and Duder kind of started this idea of writing making these blog posts and pulling in people to teaching them as a mentorship program. And then Logic went off into do other things. Duder kind of went off into do other things, and I was doing Hack5 stuff, so it died off really quickly, as many InfoSec projects do. And so a couple years later, I'm like, hey, I'm starting to do mentor-mentee stuff. I would like to take on Project Mentor again. And Logic is like, yeah, here you go. Here's the domain, whatever. And so I built out Project Mentor as a way to handle my inability to do mentee mentorship in the traditional sense. Like, I have a problem when people don't put effort into something. If I'm putting effort, you should put effort, kind of thing. So if you flake off, I'm done with you, right? So like there can be excuses and stuff like that, like about like family time, and I get all that. But like if you just are uninterested anymore, like okay, I have other things that I can focus on, right? And then I would have sometimes there would be mentees that were super into it and coming at me a lot, and it was great. But I wouldn't have time for them, and it was just something that I was super busy with, like CCDC or something at the time, and it was really frustrating because it never seemed to sync up, and that traditional mentorship program I feel only really works in a work environment where you see each other every day, and so I had the idea to make an asynchronous mentorship program where I post a question once a week, and it's a super open-ended question. So the example I always use is, here's an LM hash, tell me, or an Oracle hash, tell me everything you can about it. So super open-ended. You can crack the hash. You can tell me what Oracle's hashing is. You can tell me how it does it, like whatever. And the great thing about that is that anybody can do that. Like anybody on the internet can go and email answers at project@mentor.net and say, here's the answer to this question, any of the questions I've ever had on there. And then I get that as a top priority on my email. And then I respond with, okay, cool. What about this? Or did you think of this? Or the cool thing about that is that now I've started a conversation that both of us are interested in. And it's very asynchronous in that fact that if you just want to answer one question and be done, totally fine. If you want to answer 100 questions, I'm totally fine with that too. If you want to dig into one specific question until neither of us can figure out anything more about it, also awesome, right?
Right.
So that's where Project Mentor started going back in 2015 or so, or 14. No, even before that, it was 2011. But I had a hard time keeping up with making questions, and some people were super interested and amped about it and would do it. And I kept changing platforms because it never really felt like a good platform to do these questions on. I'd never found something like a blog post didn't seem like a great way. A bunch of different platforms I tried and never really found a good one. I think Google Classroom, which is the current iteration of it, is going to be a good one because I can now invite multiple teachers in. So I can have up to 20 different teachers. That means that I don't have to be the only one answering questions or asking questions. So that's where it is right now. We've got the teachers all in now, and they've asked a bunch of questions. And we're actually gonna release the Google Classroom code for anybody to join. We can have up to 1,000 people join.
Wow.
And probably in the next few weeks once I get done with CCDC. So I think it's finally Project Mentor's finally to a point where it's gonna thrive and go further than and be the vision that I thought it would be back in 2011.
That's super cool. And again, I love the concept of putting resources out there for people. And I think you mostly answered two of my questions. The were short ones, the current status of it and the future of it as you envision it.
So the vision I have for it is the point where I can rotate teachers in and out, and what I mean by teacher is like Montesano version of teacher. Anyone who knows anything about anything can be a teacher. So like rotating teachers in and out who want to ask questions and answer questions, and if you don't have time, exactly the same like mindset. If you don't have time to answer questions anymore, just disconnect from being a teacher, and I can invite someone else in. And if you want to come back, it's totally fine to come back. Like no harm, no foul on any of that. So my vision would be to get that that ball rolling and make it into something that is sustainable without just me.
Seems like a really sort of traditional, like even like Greek style academic experience, where basically like you have this open forum essentially of a dialogue instead of the what traditional academia is these days, which is just sort of like a one-way stream of information.
Yeah, I've actually had to break the mindset of some of our people who came in to teach already, because we're still setting this up and they're like, okay, so where do I put resources for everyone to like look stuff up? And I'm like, you don't. It's on them to learn. It's on you to ask the interesting questions. And like that's really what the core is.
That sounds awesome. I do some work mentoring a new team. They call it Cyber Patriot now, is the franchise.
I love Cyber Patriot. I help.
Yeah, so at my old high school, they just started that, and I've been meaning to try and work with some of the students there, and that's sort of the biggest problem I've had is sort of like getting in a mode where I can facilitate the asynchronous conversations. So this has really helped me think about a lot of things, and I will be very closely following this project.
I would suggest for Google Classroom, I'll be doing the same for next year for the students I help with, is doing the exact same thing as Project Mentor, just specifically for your classroom group.
Right, yeah.
A lot of the students already know Google Classroom.
Yeah, and I know my old high school, they're integrated in that ecosystem. So yeah, no, I'm very excited to see the code come out for that.
This is the first time I've ever heard of Google Classroom. I guess that shows how old I am at this point.
What code?
Oh, sorry. I thought you mentioned the Google Classroom code as something I heard.
No, there's like Google Classroom is just a website that.
Okay. Okay. I thought there might be some configuration on top, but that's even easier then. Great.
Oh yeah, it's super. And the great thing is, due to COVID, they released it as something that anyone can start up now. So any user can create a Google Classroom class with. If you use G Suite, you get 1,000 students and 20 teachers. If you use just your Gmail account, you still get 250 students and like 20 teachers, and it's awesome.
That's great.
Thanks, COVID.
Should do a segment on just the things that COVID has really helped society with.
Sweatpants sales.
Have you seen Nintendo Switch sales? They're going for $400, $500, $600 on Amazon and eBay. It's nuts.
I can't even
could
get a
talk to you about
Switch.
turnips prices though.
Oh, don't get me started on turnips.
Stonks. Animal Crossing stonks. So I do have a kind of a follow-on question. It sounds like you've been in and around the information security space for a while. I know that in the time that I've been around it, I've observed some changes, trends in how formal education around the information security or community has worked, is changing. Like for-profit training, the trend towards for-profit training, the trends around kind of free content distribution, via blogs and Medium and things of that nature versus kind of the longer form investments in book publications. Like, from your perspective, in the time that you've been around the industry and focused on training as a problem, like, what are some of these trends that you like, and what are some of these trends that you have a bone to pick with?
So, I have a bit of a bone to pick with the lack of blog posts. A lot of people are just doing tweets and little Medium posts, and sometimes very short form things, and they don't stick around. Like, bookmarking tweets is what I've gotten to start doing, because like it's super frustrating to find that. And like that's the only place they post the cool thing. It's like
Right.
I love Benjamin, but like Gentle Kiwi, he doesn't document anything. You have to figure out with Mimikatz, you have to go to his tweets and like go back in time and look and search through screenshots, because he doesn't actually post the command in anything but a screenshot. So you literally have to run like
My God, I didn't realize that.
The least indexable format ever.
right.
Yeah.
So
Blogs seem to have really declined in popularity. Like there was a kind of the peak of blogging at one point, and the problem with Twitter is you can delete old tweets. They don't really get archived that well. They're not indexed that for searching. Along these sorts of lines, like not a screenshot anyway.
You can also end up on block lists in weird ways that sometimes you don't intend, and so that can affect accessibility sometimes.
I mean, you never intend to be on a block list, but yeah, I totally agree.
Well,
I don't know about that.
I mean, one topic, one kind of popular topic along in the same vein or theme of the previous questions I asked is like, what are your thoughts around the certification culture and how that's comparing to, other more formal academic accreditation?
So this is going to be a long answer. I apologize in advance because I have a very big bone to pick for this.
Yeah.
Strap in.
I think we're all on your side for this. So yeah, go ahead.
So maybe not. So the problem right now is that we honestly don't pay teachers enough to create content and learn fast enough for the industry. So professors get into being a professor or a high school teacher these days, and they aren't paid to go to Black Hat DEF CON or learn the content any further. And changing course material is such a hassle at a university, and it's such a hassle at a high school level even, that it's not worth it. If I'm getting paid $20,000 a year as a teacher, and the only benefit that I can have to changing my content around my course material around is the smiling faces of my students, which is usually enough. But like, I'm not going to pay out of my pocket that's already limited to go to a bunch of conferences to learn this stuff, right? So if we paid our instructors the same way we pay, and I'm a Black Hat teacher, so like I'm killing my own self. If we paid like college professors the same we paid that black hat teachers, then we wouldn't have a problem. We really wouldn't, because they would have enough money to go learn all of the things, and we'd have so much better output from colleges and universities. So
Right.
right now, so to answer your question more succinctly, right now we need the certification and paid training because we can't get it anywhere else. Now, I just in from 2015 to 2019, I worked on getting my bachelor's degree in information security. I can tell you that while the security content was not all that awesome, I passed it pretty easily. I learned a ton about project management, about managing teams, about managing different aspects of cybersecurity, about how to communicate businesses. Colleges have been doing that stuff for decades, right? Ages and ages. So they know how to communicate to businesses. They know how to manage projects. All of that content is super advanced. So I do believe that more people in InfoSec should go through a college degree and get a college degree simply to learn the skills that we generally don't have if we just go a traditional certification route.
Right.
How do you feel
So-
about like the
Yeah.
4 and 6 month boot camps?
To get certifications,
No, to get placed like in a job. Like,
Coding
as a-
dojos or that kind of thing.
oh, I don't have any particular feeling about them. Like, as long as if you're passionate about a job and you get that passion from a boot camp, awesome. Like, I don't really care how you got into InfoSec. I care how you
What you do once you're there.
what you do with it, right? So
Yeah.
like I have been in talks, 30-45 minute talks at DerbyCon or Black Hat or DEF CON, where I have learned 100 times more than I've learned in a year sometimes. So I don't think people learn specifically at any specific speed. So boot camps or whatever certifications, like I don't really have a feeling towards them.
Do you have a sense that there's a shortage of competent, information security talent available?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, I've been trying to circle
Are you
around that,
sure?
right? Because you're really dedicated to doing like InfoSec training. It must be that you have some sort of feeling that it's needed or that it's important.
Yeah. I also feel that we don't have a unified front on any specific topic, and that's one of the biggest problems. Is that I can go through a CEH training, which is the bane of my existence, because I do not like that certification. And I have long stories about that one, but so I can go through a CEH training done by Joe McRae, and he's a wonderful teacher. Teaches tons of stuff, lots of stuff that isn't in the CEH. He goes into lots of different topics, and then I can go through another teacher who teaches straight book CEH or even off book CEH, and I can tell you for 100% guarantee, even without knowing who that other teacher is, without knowing any of the CEH content that they might have in the training material right now, that those two teachers will teach drastically different topics and drastically different ideas, even down to I'll give you an example. If I asked everyone on the podcast right now, if I told you to write down your password on a sticky note, would you? I guarantee everyone would have different answers.
Probably write down
Is
Right.
is it secure to write down a sticky note or write down your password on a sticky note?
is like pre 4 beers or like post 4 beers?
See, I think it depends on your threat model, right? Like, Does the password need to be resilient against evil maids?
Indeed.
Specifically, just the maids.
So I don't want to wander too far. There was a touch point that I want to bring back on one of the comments you made, Rob.
Sure.
And specifically when comparing, some of the challenges in how content's developed in formal academic environments versus the content that's developed for like for-profit training. And from my perspective, when I think about that problem, it's like different incentives models, right? The academic
Absolutely.
environment is trying to make an investment for this like longer form cycle where they're going to get value out of that, corpus for like 10 years or whatever model that they're aiming towards, versus the kind of like for private training has a much more narrowly defined goal, right? Usually it's like a tactical skill that they're trying to get people, to at least a walking speed with. And that change in scope kind of really affects the incentives on what kind of content's getting developed.
Agreed. Except for the only pushback I'd have is that the amount of some of the black hat trainings will take you from 0 to intermediate in 4 days, and you would get the exact same amount of knowledge even in the 4 years of some schools.
Right.
So I understand you're in the piece on incentives, like that the colleges need to have those course contents be certified and accredited and go forward for many years in the future, because it takes a lot of money to do those accreditations and stuff. So I get that. I just wish, I totally agree and wish it was different.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have incentives. They may be in perverse incentives, but
So I'll say that when I took my security class in college, where it's just one class and it's optional, and I think if people at the college knew what the developers were putting out there in terms of bugs right out of college, they might reconsider that's optional. That's a conversation for another day. We had a professor.
No, I will fight you on this. No, I don't think that developers have to know security.
Sure.
I think that frameworks where they build things in are the difference, where that, like, there shouldn't be a framework where you're allowed to make a SQL injection opportunity, right?
Yeah.
That's what Visual Code or Visual Studio has done for SQL injection, for buffer overflows. When you make like a CTF and try and make a binary that has buffer overflow, a standard buffer overflow, you have to fight and fight and fight to make it build, because even GCC will tell you, no, you can't do that. This is insecure. Like, I think we are done with the idea that it needs to be developers who make things more secure. I think that we need to get those frameworks. We need to attack the problem at the base instead of at the end.
the problem is that you do have developers that end up moving towards maybe those environments, and like I think an intro security class is at least worth it for everyone.
So that's a little tangential to what I was talking about. I will say that it seems like every framework author reinvents the same bugs over and over again. Again, another conversation for another day. But when I was in college,
Node.js.
We had a professor who came in from Microsoft Research, and he was just sort of like a one-off thing, and he sort of came up with his own curriculum. And it was a very interesting course content, tried some experimental things, did a thing at the end of the quarter where we all got into teams of 6 and like tried to team up and find bugs in like the head of the Mozilla Firefox repository.
I think I remember you doing that project.
Yeah, and so
wait. So a Microsoft employee tried to get you to find bugs in a competitor's browser.
Let's not focus on the details.
That
meta.
Seems a bit sketchy.
I guess when you put it that way, that's a very interesting conundrum. But
was this a public school in the state of Washington?
It's a rather prominent one.
That sounds quite illegal, actually.
Okay. I mean, we was all under the bug bounty program, but that's a
okay. That's better. but
So
still,
he was trying to get you to take money away from the 501c3 organization.
But so that project kind of fell on its face in implementation. But it
Weird.
does seem like there are. I've seen firsthand alternative models that maybe there's a little more pliability there on the curriculum at the college
Yeah.
level, at least.
So at Western Governors University, which is the online university that I've been getting my degree from, I got my bachelor's from, and I'm working on my master's for. They changed the curriculum quite a bit, but it's such a wrenching change. Just as like I understand that it's needed, and even for me, like getting the course I was just working on changed while I was working on it is a little frustrating. So I understand from a college perspective the reluctance to change, even outside of the course curriculum and certification aspects too. So I understand a lot of the reasonings behind it, and even with something where you can have adjunct professors come in and add new content or change content, which is great. It's just not something I think is super sustainable.
Agreed. Yeah.
Stuck in dependency hell? Call the Hacker Helpline at 206-486-6272. That's 206-486-NARC, or send an email to podcast@symbolcrash.com.
InfoSec training in general, like hacker training, is kind of intrinsically paradoxical, right? Like you're putting together some central curriculum to train people to think outside of the box, or to view, to view the negative space, right? To look at all of the things that the people who normally look at making a thing work forward overlook.
Oh my God, that can be so frustrating too when you have people who are very much box thinkers coming into a training where you're trying to teach them thinking out of the box. That will test your limits.
Oh, absolutely. And but at the same
dissonance.
but at the same time, our tech explosion in this generation has happened so quickly that there aren't enough highly trained developers, there aren't enough security engineers, to maintain this complexity, and so there's this huge demand for like security engineers to be trained. So I'm just wondering, you did mention that kind of like Socratic question asking method, which I thought was really interesting. But I was wondering if you had any other kinds of tips to get the box thinkers to step outside of their box.
Honestly, so sorry.
That's a tough one. I struggle with this constantly.
No, so there's two modes to this. First, you can see if you can spark that interest in something. Once someone has that spark in their brain, they'll take it. They'll run with it. And if they don't, that's totally fine too. One of the best web application security people that I've ever met was a box thinker. He read manuals constantly, and he would hands down know every trick of the trade just because he read the 5,000 page manual and knew exactly how every single API call worked and every single way that it didn't work right. And he didn't work outside the box. Like he was literally a 9 to 5. If you talked to him after 5 o'clock, he was not working person, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, no wrong with that. Unusual. He made it all the way to 5.
No, but like he's the one that changed my concept. Like I thought that everyone in InfoSec has to have passion. Everyone in InfoSec has to be like building labs at home and developing like like all kinds of stuff on the side and doing Twitter and all that kind of stuff. He changed my mind on this because like he was just a force of nature when it came to literally anything when it came to web apps. Like he would learn everything there was to know about this web app or the framework behind it or whatever. And he'd do it in a 9 to 5 spot. And so I think that we just need to not force box thinkers outside of their box, but to find the best way to utilize them.
Wow, that's a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking of all the box thinkers in my life now, and
I really like the point of iterating over the specification or like whatever the documentation is and knowing it to a complete T, because that is one of the ways that I end up finding some really good vulnerabilities too.
Right.
I suppose I'm asking the wrong question, right? Like, I shouldn't be asking how to make box thinkers think outside of the box. I should be asking how to make more people useful security engineers. You know?
That's a people problem, right? You have to have good leaders, and leaders are not managers, and managers are not leaders. Like it's not mutually exclusive. I hate to push a book on anyone, but Simon Sinek's "Leaders Eat Last" is hands down the best book that I could recommend on getting leaders to actually be leaders. If you don't feel if you feel comfortable enough with your relationship with your manager and you can ask them to read this book, I guarantee they'll learn a bunch off of it. And one of the biggest stories out of that book is something that I didn't get until I was out of the Marine Corps on why it worked that way. And the title of the book is Leaders Eat Last, because in the Marine Corps, officers, staff NCOs, anyone who is above you eats last. It's an unwritten but very, very well followed rule that if you're an officer or you're in charge of Marines, they eat first, no matter what. Like even if there's not going to be enough for you, they eat first, because they're the ones defending you. Because you're the officer giving orders, they're the ones on the front line. And just that core concept, that core feeling, I think we need more of in leadership in general, to develop and figure out where to put our box thinkers, our out of the box thinkers, our people.
Talking about like tech company leadership.
Star,
Yeah, just in general. Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, it feels like there's some crossover there between that and going back to good teachers that you have as a young person, because that's what they do for you. I think that's my takeaway from that.
I mean, a teacher is a leader essentially. They're the leader of the forum. They're the leader of of your environment in that when you're doing that.
Can I circle back to the CEH thing for a moment?
Sure.
Real quick. Okay, so I love Joe McRae. I've never met him in real life. One of my friends has taught CEH all across the globe, and he and Joe are like best friends.
Yep.
What's your issue with CEH?
It literally has the wrong answers. So I when I was first taking my CEH, because I was joining a government contract, and the 8570 sucks, but the CEH was the requirement for that contract, and so I was taking it. And at the time, I ran. This is another Hack 5 story. I ran Hack 5 Radio. For any of you that are listening that remember that, and it was a pirate radio where we just broadcast all the time for all kinds of stuff and gave stuff away. But anyways, I was using Hack 5 Radio to study. So I would read through the questions at the end of the chapters in these books on test, and then I'd have them guess the listeners guess the answers, and then whoever got it first would get the prize or whatever it was we were giving away. And after about 2 chapters of this book, I realized that all of the questions all of the answers were so wrong that you just had to guess the most absurd answer and you got it right. I'm not kidding. This was where it was. So
not sure if it was CEH, but there was one that I remember distinctly. A friend of mine was telling me, "What is the block size of RSA?" What? RSA is not a block-based cipher, and the answer did not have 1024 like any sort
actual
of
block sizes.
any of the actual sizes of standard key lengths in there. It was something like 128 or 192 or something like that.
All right. Yeah, exactly. So I actually went to a conference where the writer of the CEH was, and I brought this up to her, and she lit me up. Let's just say that interaction was not well received. And so I hated the CEH ever since. And unfortunately, through my master's program, the CEH is one of the certifications you have to get as part of the classes. So I am again certified as the CEH. I had to take that stupid test again. And I was hoping that 10 years would have changed a lot in this test. It has not.
So now it's out of date and incorrect questions.
Yes. So while I think the training that Joe McRae does and a few of the other instructors is amazing, I think that the test itself has too much wrong in it that it is giving people a bad knowledge base. Does that answer your question?
It does, and yeah, I don't know about the course material that I could even make a counterpoint. So I'm going to take your word for that.
You should try. You should just go take the CEH and figure and
I don't
try it
think
out for yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Just make a cat of nine tails and just flog yourself if you want as well.
About the same.
CISSP still the yardstick?
Oh, and going back to that, before you respond, a friend of ours said something about the CISSP earlier. Is responding to a blog article. He said something about precisely why he spent more time writing critiques of the exam than he spent taking the exam, and also why he let the certification lapse. Something to that effect.
I think the CISSP was the one that had the RSA block size question.
I just wouldn't join any club that would have me as a member.
Yeah, that's a famous quote.
Groucho Marx.
Yep. So I think the CEH or the CISSP is a yardstick that is decent. It's better. Like if I'm putting 0 at the CEH, the CISSP can't do anything but better, right?
So I really feel like I know several people who have a CISSP who couldn't hack their way out of a wet paper bag.
Yeah, the CISSP is not an offensive training or even a offensive certification. It's a do you understand the domains of security? And most of the people who've taken the CISSP understand the basic concepts of the domains of security.
The OCSP or whatever, Iron Geeks certification is the offensive one, right? But that's mostly just like, can you use tools?
In my opinion, I don't think that there's a way to really make a certification that you can get that does not have people passing just by rote memorization, which is not the same thing as understanding material.
Oh, I disagree. Like the Rasta mouse or the 0-point security test I just took.
Yeah.
It was super hard. I did not get all of the flags. I barely passed. It was
So it's the CPF style?
Yeah, so you have to break into a bunch of different systems with AppLocker all the way on, Defender all the way on, constrained
language.
language,
Oh God,
language
I hate
mode.
that. So
All three of those you have to fight.
what's this called again?
It's called 0 Point Security's Red Team Operators course. So it's all Windows, so you're not going to learn binary exploitation. You're not going to learn the stuff that you see in the OSCP, but you are going to learn all of the Windows stuff that you need for and it's super focused on pivoting. Like if you can't pivot from one box to another without using another shell coming back to you, you are not going to pass this class.
Constrained language mode
It's
is
pretty legit. Sounds like just basically based upon the fact that they are having you actually implement these attacks. Like,
yep.
That's, to be fair, if that's that is the, if it's not like, yeah, it's not a multiple choice. It's a actually do the thing and then you pass.
And also
Yeah,
to my understanding, like CLM is not something that's been widely adopted in the United States yet, and it's more common in Europe.
Yep.
I don't know if that's still true. Is that still true?
Yeah. For the places I've noticed, yeah, it's CLM's not there yet.
And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's very much harder to get around.
Agreed.
And that's all I have to say about that.
So, wrap up.
You wrap up. Yeah.
Was that a cue for me to do something?
No.
I'm not ready for it.
No. Yeah, usually that's our cue for Dan to ask his final question that he's been sitting on for 20 minutes. Because otherwise, immediately after we stop recording, he's like, oh.
comes up with the most bomb fucking question that
yeah. You're like, oh, that should have been half the episode. Yeah.
I mean, like, I try to ask more open-ended questions, and you've been a really good sport about a lot of them. I guess like the only other real question that I would throw out there is like, what is the change you would like to see? You've already spoken, you've touched on this a couple times in some of your other answers, but like, what, if you could put into as few words as possible, what's the biggest change that you would like to see in how people are introduced to the industry to be capable, effective members?
I think it's already happened. I think that just having the ego and the animosity of new members and the rite of passage be gone is mostly gone. Like I think that 99.9% of people getting into InfoSec are welcomed with open arms, and I think that's the change I wanted to see happen, and it's already here. So, yeah.
I think to touch on that, one of the things I forgot to mention before was that I feel like part of the reason for that shift is sort of the movement away from hackers being persecuted nearly as much. I mean, because in like the 90s, it was dangerous to sort of just call yourself or be affiliated with anything sort of like being a hacker in public, because the press was so incredibly bad at the time. And legitimate government agencies on your ass all the time.
Or you can be a boring hacker, and that's pretty normal.
Yeah.
there was a good while after the Patriot Act where people were scared to run Nmap or anything. I mean, at all.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. One of my old coworkers was arrested for basically running Nmap.
Story for another time.
Yeah.
For sure. I think you've answered all my questions like very well.
Thank you so much. This is
really appreciate,
really appreciate you.
I have a question
us.
for all of you then.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So, if you could change one thing, in specifically whatever your main focus is in information security, I know there's a lot of focuses and people have different expertise. So whatever you believe your biggest expertise is in, what would be the big change? What's the expertise and what is the big change you want to see?
This is the one question I wanted to ask you that I forgot.
So
It
okay,
is.
so I'll go first.
Let me go, but let me qualify a little bit more. Basically, like, what, like, do you not know a bunch about now that you really want to learn more about?
That's a
What
different
do I know?
question. Let's go with his.
That's a
Completely
different question.
Yeah, totally unrelated.
Is it
So-
really though?
It
I,
is.
I,
This is
I personally want to learn more C coding, like I want to be able to develop my own tools better, faster, easier. That's the straight answer for that.
I'd recommend Golang, but you know.
Oh, I program in Golang, I program in Rust, I program in Python or Ruby. But
You already know Rust and you're going to C. That's like Dylan going acoustic or electric. I don't know. I wasn't alive then.
well, programming in C just goes straight to a binary, right? So you don't have to like destroy yourself trying to use Windows API calls. So like that's the golden programming language on Windows and on Linux.
When you
Right?
So yeah, when you say that, like, and you talk about programming C, are you talking about it mostly in a Windows or a Linux environment? I know about. I mean,
Windows.
Is this just because you want to do shellcode and you don't want to write assembly?
or you want to like skip to the syscalls with avoiding the APIs in Windows.
No, I literally want to use all the Windows API calls that I know about. Like I love a bunch of the Windows API calls. I just can't code enough to do the like. I wrote NetView a long time ago, and that was literally copying and pasting like the example code from MSDN to get it to work. Right. So, and I can't fix it. Like I have some code called Ditto that I absolutely love. I've used it quite a bit, but I can't fix it to work on newer systems because I don't know what needs to change. And so that's really where I fall down and I need to get better at.
Right on.
Windows really exposes absolutely everything
Yeah.
through some API or another. Yeah, I know. I saw you did a you did an Impacket video at one point.
Yeah. I love Impacket.
Impacket is absolutely incredible. It is the most complete open source third party implementation of a client that can call into various Windows remote procedure call methods. It's a Python script, but I use that as a reference when I'm like re-implementing stuff in Go all the time. It's kind of the source code of record for doing Windows remoting. But man, when you look through it, every little thing that Windows does is exposed to RPC. Like every little thing. It goes back to like the 90s when you could you could remotely connect to someone else's notepad with DCOM over the network, and then just like edit whatever file you want on their computer. But anyway, so we should answer the other question though. We should answer, I guess, the what is the change we want to see in our area of expertise. I mean, I guess my the problem that I see that I'm most stuck on is there was a really noticeable drop off of training in computer science around 2002 2003, which corresponded with an explosion in the development of kind of the new web, which a huge amount of the economy is based on now, and what that means.
They switch over to like the informatics style programs, right?
Yeah. And the result of that is that we built this huge, complicated worldwide system that all of our, economic activity is relying on. And it's very fragile. It's overly complicated. There's too many opportunities in the frameworks, which you mentioned. There's too many opportunities for people without the appropriate training to make mistakes. And that I would absolutely agree with you that that's a problem with the framework design. But it can be very tricky. For example, you mentioned SQL. You can say, well, require prepared statements for everything, but then you find people concatenating strings to make the template. instead of concatenating strings to make the parameters, and then you end up it's still injectable, right? Even though it's like everything's a prepared statement. So it's like people, especially game companies, will find a way to work around any security safeguard that you try to put in a framework. Yeah, ridiculous things game developers do in the name of performance is probably a whole other podcast episode.
Can we get
But
Josh?
I worked with John. I worked with Romero once. I'm pretty sure he'd remember me. He remembers everybody, but like literally everybody. But I think the thing that I kind of most want to see is security engineering, like just sort of continuing to become a first-class citizen inside first corporations, and then maybe down the line, like even municipal governments or whatever, like when they get around to it. But there's an evolution happening. I think there has been an upswing in people getting computer science degrees again, and there's a lot more people who are interested in security, and there's a big push on every one of us in the industry to try and help more people on board as quickly as possible. So that's why I was really happy to talk to you. I was really interested in what you had to say about training, because that's a passion I have myself. Like how to make more useful security engineers. Any way you can. So I think what I'd like to see is we need people to be functioning developers without having a college degree, and that needs to be safe. And I think long term that is making frameworks where it's impossible for them to make an error. I think we are sort of moving in that direction, but there's a lot of stumbling blocks. But the other thing I'd really like to see is companies taking security seriously internally, even when no one's watching. And viewing it as an efficiency, it's actually a cost saving measure. It's like if you take some simple steps as early on in the process as possible to prevent introducing a lot of extra work later, you've actually saved money. And it's this sort of like long term.
But proving that's almost impossible.
Yeah, I always tell people to read The Toyota Way. That's the book I like to throw at people.
Okay. I'll take a look. I hadn't heard about that one before.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a big deal in the auto industry and with software companies that deal with controls, like controls engineering, where they cannot make mistakes. It tends to be less popular with web developers.
More popular in like medical systems, flight control systems.
Yeah.
Web regulated.
Mistake.
Yeah.
That's why.
Web developers absolutely make mistakes. Yes.
Well, no, it's a
mistake. Well, and then things like Node and Electron too. It's like it's made it a lot easier for people to make something that looks like a service, but it's still easy to make just horrible, risk decisions. So I think a lot of it might have to do with just educating people about what actual risks look like, so that they can make better decisions. But I've definitely sucked up enough time, so I'll let somebody else answer. So if you don't remember at this point, the question is, in your area of expertise, yeah, right. In your area of expertise, what is the change you'd most like to see?
I can go next.
All right.
So I've done enough work at this point looking at like whole services at scale and like thinking about how you threat model services. And I think a lot of the industry has been focused on doing pen tests where the code that you're working on, the changes that you're working on are in scope for this pen test or the security review, which is great if you get that stuff over time. One thing we're starting to see more and more of, and we're starting to see classification for this, is various attacks on dependencies that come in that are brought in either third-party libraries, old versions of a C library that are just sort of stuck in the build system, what have you, and it's hard to know what the depth of complexity of your attack surface there is. You're not looking at it. And I think we're starting to realize that we haven't spent enough time focusing on that part of the iceberg, mostly because there's a fixed time amount of effort. And so that if you focus your time on that part of the problem, you're probably going to find the highest level bugs quickest in your service, but that doesn't mean you found everything. And so thinking about how we go deeper on the dependency problem and sort of tracking that across systems, we mentioned it in a previous episode, there's just a huge backlog of like CVE processing too that needs to be done that just there's not enough funding to take care of right now.
I think that GitHub is fighting this in the biggest way.
Yes.
The biggest way that I've seen anyone fight it, right? With their security reviews of like gem lock files and all that kind of stuff. And you get emails every month or every few weeks about all of the dependencies that have vulnerabilities in them. And that can, like, I have stuff in my old code that has really old dependencies that have vulnerabilities, and like I went back and fixed a bunch of them just because I got annoyed with the emails, right? So
yeah, no, they've been at the forefront of that for a while, and some of the new stuff that they're working on in terms of modeling dependencies across different sets of applications is in like graph forms and other ways. I'm really excited to see, but yeah, so welcoming all sorts of stuff like that.
Yes.
Max, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. So what I'd like to see more of is Intel getting spanked. I really like this.
like the company.
Yeah, the company.
The intelligence community, or like
No, the company Intel, and just in general. So
what
like
are
a lot of the
what are the
security.
links of
what expertise is that, by the way?
Right now I'm doing security research, but I in general just sort of like anything to do
Microcode?
Specializing in spanking.
Yeah.
Right. No, but what
Thank you for understanding my question.
What are the links of the microcode instructions? They're weird. They're like a 72 and 118 or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a conversation. Yeah,
the microcode stuff is cool, and I think it has to do with the fact that they're using 3 gates or three micro instructions per instruction. But anyways,
excited about the microcode leaking, but we have company over, guys. Come on.
Yeah, super excited about that. We'll talk about that some other time. In general, just the security through obscurity, though, that Intel has relied upon for a lot of its security products. It's like that's a major example, since I'm assuming we're all running an Intel or x86 based system in order to chat on this Discord. They're pretty prominent. But just like other manufacturers, I really hope move towards actually securing things properly, as opposed to just relying upon security through obscurity. Because more and more so, hardware attack vectors are becoming well-known and easy for a lower cost, like a more limited budget individual to implement.
I know this isn't directly CPU based, but the EFI boot OS basically is my new favorite place to live. Because it's compared to old bootloader like boot space that you had, like this is so gigantic, right? This is so gigantic. Like I'm like, I can put Doom in here.
Now we know why you want to learn C, right? Like you looked at tianocore.org and the EDK, and you're like, I can write me an option ROM that plays Doom.
I'm pretty sure you can, using the EDK graphics library. That's powerful.
So there was actually one of the coolest books I've ever seen posted. It was open sourced, or it wasn't actually published by a publisher. It was a book on EFI game programming, and it was how you can program Pong and a few other games in as part of your EFI boot, and you can select it. It even gives you a menu option in EFI to pick what OS. So if you want to go to your main OS or play Pong, and like this was written by a hacker because he makes, or he or she, whoever the writer was, makes so many suggestions on if you want to load a network connection for your Pong game, you can do this. I'm like,
Right? Yeah, that was gonna say.
why
that-
would you ever want to load a network connection for Pong?
Never get
So we're definitely gonna have to find the link to that and make sure to
Sure.
include it in our blog post about this.
Yeah, that's great.
episode.
Draw something that looks exactly like the disk encryption password field. For a game. It's for a game.
Yeah.
I will get you that link after we're done here.
Awesome.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, the EFI is a lot of fun. So where were we? Who's up next?
I think Dan's up next.
Dan's up next.
Oh boy. What's the one singular thing I would like to see improve?
What's your expertise first, and then we'll go into that.
I started in web, but I then kind of went wide and kind of started hitting everything, like the whole stack. And now I spend a lot of time thinking about large scale controls for big software organizations. But I still pay a lot of attention to web. I think the thing that I would really like to see improve is all of the kind of the ecosystem around the operating system 2.0 that are browsers, to kind of learn their history and stop reinventing the same mistakes so many fucking times. If we could, like, if I'm just gonna mic drop the one thing I would like to see improve, it's not to see the same
in
issues.
1996.
I don't want to see a slightly better looking coded version of 1996. Like, fuck you.
There does need to be an info, like not infosec, but like a history of computing that just sort of goes through, like, these are the things that we had before. And like, my friend went through a coding boot camp for like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and I'm like, yeah, so like 10 years ago, JavaScript did not have any of these features.
Yeah, I mean,
look
like,
at C++. Jeez.
it's like, writing code on a fixed time schedule is a hard problem. I get it. I understand the plight of the developer. It's easy to get into those kind of tunnel visions, to see a feature request and try and think, on the fly how to solve it. But the longer form thinking is clearly lacking, I think, in some of these more, I guess we can label it emergent, but it seems kind of core to such a large part of the industry now that calling it emergent is a little facetious. But yeah, like, just, get back to basics. Like we don't need the fourth turning. We don't need the fourth turning in consumer software just because we were trying to. This kind of speaks to if I digress, people feel free to jump in and stop me. But like this was actually it's related to my initial reaction when you were highlighting, like, hey, we need to standardize everything into a set of frameworks. And there are some classes of problem that I totally agree are addressed that way. But oftentimes what we see, especially in the open source world, right, is that someone has a 10% new idea, unique take, and then like phones in the other 90% of their framework. Right, because they had the really novel idea that was like a feature to another framework that was already there, but then they decided, well, I want to have sovereignty, agency, and control over this, so I'm just gonna throw it into my own framework.
Cough.
Right, and so like, I mean, I support open source. I'm a fan of open source. I think it's great. It's done a lot of really good things. There are some other trends in developer behavior that I think is kind of making it harder to call certain types of problems, certain classes of issue done and dead. And that would be something that I would like to see improve over time. I don't know if that bridged too much of some of the previous topics discussed, but that's my answer.
Any idea how you would like to frame that? How you get that done?
Yeah,
like,
so
if you had $1 billion or $1 trillion and everybody was answering to you for a day, what would you do?
Whoa.
For this specific topic.
Rob,
Well,
chill, guy.
Yeah, well, so I there's like the higher order answer, and then there's like the more direct answer. The higher order answer is, I think the one singular skill that I would want to pick up on a daily basis is getting is continually improving my understanding of fundamental mathematics, so I can figure out new ways to make data lie to me. So that's going to be my ever focused skill gain.
Sure.
And the why is so that we can build larger and larger control schemes that apply to broader and broader, basically get the human out of the loop. I love humans, don't get me wrong, but there's
No, you
there's
don't.
whole classes. I do like people.
There's a well known quote that if a person says anything and then but, nothing before that but means anything. I love
out.
humans, but yeah.
No, I love people. I do.
The dumb, panicky animals that we are.
Yeah. There are some
having
types
trouble
of problems. There are some types of problems that are better solved. We're great at creativity. We're not great at standardization. I'd phrase it like that.
Yeah.
And so that understanding the strengths and weaknesses there, and factoring that into the systems we build to build things is really, really important. Overfitting, and maybe this is too much of an advertisement. The stuff that GitHub is doing, putting a lens on that is actually really, really critical. The partnerships they're looking at with SEML, trying to identify more generic modeling techniques for certain classes of vulnerability, so that they're somewhat language agnostic, so they can have these kind of normalized control flow representations or model representations of source code across multiple languages, and have that all mapped to one code QL engine or something of that nature. I think that's really important work. I think it's something that should be watched closely, and I think it's something that we should try to get more investment in across multiple industries.
I think you're just talking your way into keeping that $1 trillion.
Is that what I did?
Yeah,
did I keep the
he
$1 trillion?
did not answer the question at all when it comes to the $1 trillion.
So you've still kept that $1 trillion. What would you spend it on?
What would I spend?
Women in cheap donuts, right? No.
What? I didn't. I guess I didn't catch that part of the question. What would I spend?
It was the whole question.
What would I spend?
It was literally the question I asked. It was,
yeah.
You have $1 trillion and everyone listens to you for a day. What's the answer? And you did not answer that question in any way, shape, or form. But thank you for
you're looking for a concrete Brewster's Millions type answer. Like what would you spend the money on?
Yeah, I guess 999 billion on expanding SEML as a product and lowering its price point for adoption, and then 1 billion for just as many parties as possible for adoption. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
SEML fanboy. Are we doing sponsorships yet? Can they sponsor us?
I mean,
I thought they already were. I thought they already were at this point.
I was talking to Bob Dylan's people, but they after Ben made a joke earlier, they shot us down.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
So I think Justin's.
You gonna bring us home, Justin?
Cool. Yeah, no, I don't. I think if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said that I had areas of expertise, and I wouldn't say that now. But in kind of keeping with the theme of the show and making information available to more people in the process of learning, I was taught to program at a really young age, and I think that this is a trend that's already happening, but I think we should start teaching kids to program like from first grade on. I think it's just that's what's gonna happen. I think it's probably already starting to happen. So
that's a great thought.
It's a great thought. I was taught to program myself at a very young age, just on an Apple II, like simple, basic games and stuff. And it was around the same time I had still had training wheels on my bike. I wasn't that confident of a swimmer, but I think getting just the basic principles of branching, and conditional logic, and even if you don't really have anything to do with it other than make some dots move around on the screen, just having that in my head back when my brain was squishy and absorbed stuff real good made all future learning I think a lot easier. And you,
My-
you were talking about good teachers, great teachers. Like the guy that ran, it was just like this summer course, because both my parents worked, so they'd like drop me in this they call it like college for kids thing. And but my teacher from that, I had the same guy every year for like 5 or 6 years. And when I get all misty thinking about like the people that have like influenced my life or whatever, like he's right up top of the list for sure. Because the weird thing about programming too is once you know how to program, it's one of those things where all of the other experiences you have in your life, you can translate into that set of metaphors.
You have no idea how often I end up putting multitasking and like various things in computer science formats, like in my head, like like as far as getting things done, like I don't have a preemptive scheduler, like
You don't have branch prediction.
Yeah, I have some branch prediction. It's not that great though.
So yeah, I would definitely second that one for sure. So
Cool. Thank you for answering my question.
Wow, phenomenal.
You're welcome. That's why we were here today.
Thanks for demonstrating how to run a podcast. Because
wow,
clearly we're struggling here.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, I got two questions. So one is, we never asked what the origin of your handle was.
Oh, that's right.
So while I was an avid gamer, I played Ultima Online, which was oddly very welcoming environment. Like unlike many other games where they're very like attacking PvP style. Like Ultima Online was one of the first MMOs, and it was really like mostly played by adults and mostly played not by assholes.
Did you play it when you could still break into people's houses?
Absolutely. I actually run UO Shack, if you remember that.
Oh, nice.
Shit. What?
So if you go to uoshack.com right now, it still works. So anyways, but I never, not even to that point, had heard the word noob. And so that'll come into very clear later on. So after I got back to the States, after being in Okinawa, Japan, I got my first cable modem. I was super excited. Getting back into computers again and doing stuff. And I had heard about Evercrack, and I'd stayed away from it because I didn't want to get addicted to any games because I was trying to get my learn on. And so these guys at work in the Marine Corps were like, you have to play WoW, you have to play EverQuest, or you have to play EverQuest, you have to play EverQuest. And I'm like, fine, okay, I'll make an account. I'll hang out with you guys as long as you're gonna help me through the initial phases. I know what grinding is. And so they're like, yeah, sure. And so when I first joined, I pressed the like generate a name for me because I don't want to. I'm not that creative. Like, let's figure out an automatic name, and it picked Nubu's Eye, and I thought that was a really freaking awesome name. And so I joined it, and EverQuest is very different from Ultima Online. There were at the time a bunch of teenagers, and they were all assholes. And so as I was walking around, I would get, "Hey noob, how's it going, noob? What's up, noob?" Because noob boo's I, right? And I'm like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going?" And I thought, super friendly, awesome place. EverQuest is awesome. And so like, and then I would try and continue the conversation, and they'd run off. And so, like I said, a bunch of my friends from work, a bunch of the other Marines at work were like helping me through this, and they were they were going on mute, like we had a team server, and they were laughing their ass off, and and for 6 months they let this happen.
Oh my god!
And then finally, after a while, a guy at work actually said, "How's it going, noob?" And because it was not text, it was voice, I got the connotation. Like I got the inflection in it, right? And I'm like, "What?" And so I asked what he meant by that, and he's like, "You're a noob. You don't understand that? Like we've been laughing at you for 6 months." I'm like, "The fuck's a noob?" And so he's like, "Newbie, are you serious? You don't know what that," like he didn't really understand that I was that naive, and I just hadn't heard the term before. Right. And so so obviously I was a little frustrated with that, and got, red in the face, pissed off, and like that wasn't a great friendship for very long. But no, I went back to EverQuest and like, well, okay, I gotta change this thing. So I changed the new or N to an M. I changed the Xi to an X, and I searched it on Google because Google was relatively newish at the time. And the only result was this Russian researcher from the 1800s. And the end of the story is that I've kicked his ass when it comes to SEO.
Now I really want to find that Russian researcher.
You cannot find him. He is not accessible under mubix at all. Like I've even got him beat on mubix Russian because I actually put in some of my old blog posts Russian as tags, like just to kick his ass.
That's awesome.
So that was the generation of the word mubix. I got it because I was such a noob, and I live with that brand daily, and I like it.
It's good. It's so good.
Warren with pride. Awesome. All right. Final question. All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Here it goes. Are you really going to stop hacking when the cows come home?
Yes. If at any point cows start showing up in my yard, I will be so freaked out that I will be done hacking.
Fair enough.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
Also, this is not an invitation. Sorry, not an invitation to have any farmers send cows to my house.
Oh, damn it!
I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to mention it on stream.
Well, I was like, unless they lived there already, they wouldn't
I
really
know some
be
people
home.
in Chesterfield, but
All right. Well, the sound of our blood sugar dropping means it's time to end this episode. So remember, hacking is not just a crime.
it's a
It's a
survival
survival trait.